Good afternoon and welcome to the SPEDA panel. This is a virtual scrutiny panel meeting being held under the virtual meetings regulations. We're using Microsoft Teams software. The proceedings will have the same standing of validity as if taking place at a physical meeting in the town hall. We're streaming this meeting live on the internet. The YouTube link for the meeting was published with the agenda papers. A recorded version will be available to view on the North Somerset Council website within 48 hours. Councillors will by now fully understand online etiquette, which I do not feel any need to repeat. So we'll go straight into the meeting. Brent, I think you would like to start with the roll call, wouldn't you?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. So I'll take it from the top. Councillor Crockford-Hawley.
Present.
Councillor Bird.
Present.
Councillor Bridger has sent apologies, as well as Councillor Butte. Councillor Codling. Councillor Crew.
Present.
Sorry, Codling is present, sorry.
Thank you, Councillor.
Sorry.
Councillor Crosby.
Present.
Councillor Havison.
Present.
Lahog.
Present.
Councillor James.
Present.
Keating.
Present.
And Councillor Tucker.
Present.
Thank you very much, Chairman. That's everyone.
Thank you. We move then on to item 1 on the agenda. And as you will all know, Councillor Mike Solomon has been elevated. He has gone up to the executive, to those dizzy heights, and therefore is no longer vice chairman. So we need a new vice chairman, and I would like to propose Councillor Peter Crew for that role. Is there a seconder?
Seconded.
Thank you. Was that Mark Crosby?
Yes, indeed.
Yes. Are there any other nominations? In which case, Peter Crew, you are the Vice Chairman of SPEDA. And I'd like to say how much I am personally pleased, because it now means that all parties across the spectrum are represented in our, dare I use the phrase, management of proceedings. So I think that's especially important during the particularly trying times that we all find ourselves in. So I know Peter is going to work as hard as he has always worked in the past on things. So welcome to the table, Peter.
Thank you very much.
Item 2, do we have any public discussion?
There is no indications of intention to speak.
Nothing. Okay, thank you. Let's move on to item 3. Apologies, which I think we've had, but substitutes.
I've not been notified of any substitutes, Chairman.
Okay, let's move straight on then to item 4. Any declarations of pecuniary interest from colleagues? None. Item 5, minutes of the meeting on the 22nd of July. Just to explain for those who may not know, we've had many meetings since July, but of course they have all been of the informal status, where that on the 22nd of July was, rather like this meeting, a formal meeting. So would somebody like to propose we accept those minutes?
Yeah.
Peter Crew, seconded.
I can second.
Mark Crosby. Anybody against? Anybody wish to raise any items that are not otherwise on the agenda, or for any corrections? No. Those in, well, I won't ask for those in favour. Would those against please show? We will therefore assume it is passed. Thank you very much. Item 6. Are there any matters referred?
No matters referred, Chairman.
Ah, right. Right, let's get on to the main business then. Item 7, it's urban renewal, and we have the paperwork in front of us, albeit on various screens. Which officer is going to take us through this? Is it Alex? Or is it
Alex was unable to attend, so I'm afraid you have me, Councillor Crockford-Hawley. So Jenny Ford, Head of Development.
Right. Absolutely no fear that Jenny is taking us through this. And what a wonderful location you're in, Jenny, for this meeting, and in the middle of a woodland by the look of it.
It is an urban location, actually, and perhaps I'll give a prize to the first councillor who can identify it correctly. I should say the head of our property team identified it by recognising the type of tree, which was particularly impressive.
So, the first member of the public to let us know wins today's prize. There we are.
Which I'm afraid is just glory and honour.
Jenny, we've got the 8-page document in front of us. Do you want to take us briefly through it? Is that the way you'd like to handle it?
I can.
And then we will question you after. I think that's probably the sensible way, isn't it? Rather than interrupt you all the time as you go along. So,
that's fine.
On the assumption, Jenny, everybody has read the paper, let's not repeat what's in it. But if there's any salient points you'd like to just highlight for our concentration today, please do so. Okay.
So just to sort of clarify the purpose of the paper, it's not relating to a specific executive decision or similar, although it does follow on from the adoption of the Western placemaking strategy. So its purpose is to update you all and to enable sort of discussion at SPEDA about urban issues and priorities across North Somerset, not just Western, in the light of sort of the limited resources, unfortunately, that we have for this type of work. I should say the paper was a sort of compilation effort. There are quite a few different officers who have contributed. So whilst I will do my best to answer questions, there may be some items that I don't know enough about, and I'll have to come back to you afterwards. However, Jane Harrison should be joining us at around 3 o'clock, so would be able to answer anything about the economic side in particular. I think the paper starts by recognising the large proportion of the population in North Somerset, although we probably think of it as a mixed area, both urban and rural. Around 160,000 of the 210,000 population of North Somerset do live within our towns, so Weston, Clevedon, Portishead and Nailsea. And those towns also have a wider role economically, socially, culturally, as sort of hubs for a lot of activity. So they are important places. Worth highlighting also in our spatial strategy, our adopted spatial strategy, there is a lot of reference to urban renewal and regeneration and a priority of driving forward development in or at urban areas as a sustainable form of development. Of course, the towns do have economic challenges, especially at the moment with COVID, but also the ongoing restructuring of high streets in particular. However, they have a lot of opportunities. They have great buildings and public realms, and as you can see from my photo, some lovely parks. And in fact, COVID and the changing economy have presented opportunities because there are businesses who have been successful in reshaping their operation to fit the new world. And in fact, there are local businesses which have seen a boost from people living and working in their local area during the lockdown. Whether that's sustained, we will see. But certainly, for example, in Weston, the stable, which is one of our managed workspace locations, has seen a huge surge in demand during lockdown and in fact is expanding. So there can be positives out of all this, notwithstanding completely appreciate some huge challenges and difficulties for those involved as well. I mentioned at the start that for urban renewal type work, there are limited resources. It's an unfortunate reality. Work to support the urban environment isn't a statutory duty in most cases, and government funding where it comes is often focused on a specific theme or is short term and limited in scope. So it doesn't, I would say, facilitate a sort of longer term strategic approach very easily. But we do well within that. So, for example, the Heritage Action Zone and High Street Heritage Action Zone in Weston, you know, we've secured some very good funding and some good initiatives resulting from that. The three kind of areas of work I've highlighted in the paper are firstly economic support and business support. That's activity that's being undertaken. I've mentioned that Jane Harrison, the head of economy, will be joining us at 3, so I may well be able to answer questions on that, but she would be able to provide more detail. We do a lot there, particularly over the last 6 months, using some of the government money that's become available. And you will have seen a number of projects physically, such as the outdoor seating that's been provided in town centres to help with the hospitality industry, but also a lot behind the scenes, including a huge increase in the business support funding that's being channeled through the North Somerset Enterprise Area. The second item that I flagged was placemaking strategies. I mentioned that the Western placemaking strategy has recently been adopted, and you'll see with the papers we've attached a sort of first stab at a monitoring document for that, which will be kept updated and reported to various places regularly so that everyone has oversight of what's involved and how it's progressing. I think the placemaking strategies are probably where a lot of our energy is going at North Somerset Council at the moment, and they are very much a collaborative effort with partners, town councils, communities, businesses, other interested parties, because really that is the essence of placemaking, is connecting people to the place where they live and everyone coming together to make it a better place and a better used place as well, so that we make best use of what we've already got and build on those opportunities. Western I've mentioned. Portishead, some work has recently been started in conjunction with the Town Council and with, I think it's Aberdeen Investments, looking at the area around Old Mill Road and the station, future station in Portishead in particular. I'm pleased to see that's underway. And in Nailsea, I think we're hoping to follow suit fairly soon. There is a meeting with the Town Council next week, and clearly there are a lot of opportunities there, some of which relate to the sort of area around the library that we own, but again, bringing in partners like Praxis, looking at the assets that we own there, and the longer term sort of spatial plans for the area. None of which is decided as yet, but that's the process we want to go through and working with others. Clevedon has been a little bit more stop and start, I would say, but we're keen to see something following on as and when we can in the next year or so. The third strand, development sites. I mentioned earlier that the spatial strategy does assume a certain growth in housing and economy in the towns. But to be fair, those aren't always easy to deliver. Brownfield sites often do take a higher level of investment to get a good return, and I don't mean a financial return, I mean a good outcome in terms of quality and what it delivers. And so we are working, both looking at our own sites in urban areas and working with Homes England, which I'm sure John will ask me about after I finish, within Western. I think that was a bit of a canter through the paper, but what we are increasingly trying to do is join up these strands and make sure that teams across the council are working together, and that's on the practical level through choices by neighbourhood management as to the services offers and how they curate those spaces, through to the bigger public realm projects and development initiatives, and an increasing focus on things like culture and events and visitor economy as well, so that our towns are places where people want to be, not places that they're stuck unwittingly. Any questions, I think, or comments?
Thank you, Jenny. Having read the paper thoroughly and having listened to you as well, I think the paper falls into two categories, if I read it rightly. One is the honesty with which it describes the situations we find ourselves in, rather than trying to pull the wool over anyone's eyes. But the other is the hope that we are looking forward to. So I think the realization of the problems we have, but at the same time the hope that we are looking forward to match as they ought to. I mean, I think in places like Western, we have some real problems, don't we, in terms of the low residential value, the low quality of some of our private rented accommodation, the socio-economic deprivation in some parts, and I think it's the first time I've ever seen in a council document officers actually refer to jaded public realm. I think, well, that is a degree of honesty which I don't think I've seen in print before. So it is good to actually see that this is fully recognised. Plus, of course, the limited finances we have, the long-term difficulties, long-term strategic difficulties, and the specific issues around Homes England and the way they are proceeding nationally. But of course, on the hope side, I'm rather interested in the reference you make, which has been in national papers for some time. It does seem, though I've yet to see where the evidence is, but it does seem as though some of our smaller town centres are benefiting from the current problems, insofar as people who are forced to stay at home to work are popping out to their local town centres, perhaps to meet up or have coffee when you can, rather than being stuck in the great metropolitan centres, keeping those city centres ticking over. So whether that's an unintended benefit is there for us to know. I'd just be interested if there is any actual evidence to prove this. Another side which I find is going to be, I think, increasingly important. You refer to partnerships. The days when the local council could do things off its own bat, those days have gone, haven't they? And we've got to accept that. All parties have got to accept. Yes, we want more money. Yes, we could do much more if we had the money, but we don't have it, and the chances of us getting it are receding. And so we're going to need more collaboration. But interestingly, I begin to see references to collaboration with town councils, and that's fairly new, I think, for local government, for principal authorities to openly admit that the town councils, I'm not denigrating the parishes, but the bigger town councils probably have a greater role to play, and perhaps one needs to ask whether all of our town councils are ready to play that role yet, and if not, is that something they need to address? You use two interesting words, drive and steering, and I see a difference between them. The old way is we drove what we wanted to achieve. Well, now it's a much more subtle approach, isn't it, with collaboration and help from elsewhere. And in the paper as well, you admit the need for a fresh view on certain things, like the J21 Enterprise Area, looking anew rather than saying, well, this is the way we've always done it, and perhaps we need to start looking anew. And potential, that's the word, potential, which comes up several times. So if I wanted to, I could look at one side of that document and say it's doom and gloom. But on the other side, there is potential and there is hope, and that's where we've got to, I think, concentrate our efforts as we come out of this present pandemic and look forward to something which is not going to be going back to the old normal, but it's going to be very much, I think, a new normal, though not one of us yet knows quite what that's going to be. Well, that's enough from the chairman. I think, Peter, you had your hand up if I saw my screen correctly.
Yeah, just coming back on one or two things. Orchard Meadows, I'm in touch with 2 or 3 people that have businesses in Orchard Meadows, and yes, they have seen an increase in their business during this pandemic. And certainly there's been a good increase on the action we took under the Healthy High Street working group I'm on, which put the seating out, the pedestrianisation through to the seafront was also a big plus, because through that, the restaurants around there saw a big increase in their trade. You're right, we do need to try and move forward on Homes England. That is important. And I think J21 Enterprise, which of course is in a lot of it in my ward, we do need to revisit that, because it might be we seem to be moving towards possibly some more distribution outlets as opposed to office developments. But of course, we then have to rethink, because if we look at distribution, the type of building they might have, may not actually sit quite right where we've got them earmarked. And there is some areas, if you go down towards Winstoke Road down that way on Haywood Village end, there is some area of land there earmarked for commercial and some for housing. It seems to me that maybe we need to revisit that, maybe a slight reversal, and then you could put in distribution type centres. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Peter. I've got two other hands up. Is it Councillor Bird, I see, and Councillor Hugh James? I think in that order. Yes, please.
Hi, Jenny, obviously you know that my involvement as far as Western College and Nels is concerned. I've had, I don't know whether this is the place to say this, I've had representations from the developer this week asking for meetings. I noticed you noted that. I've also been talking to the property director for Praxis from London who would like to be involved. So as soon as we could get a meeting going on that, that would be, I'd be grateful.
Sorry, could I just clear up my own mind, Mike? You have been speaking to these people, what, as the local councillor? Or?
As the local ward councillor, yes. It's something I've been trying to do for about 2 years to get everybody to involve, but we're now on the fourth developer, basically.
Okay.
So, so yeah, it's moving forwards, but slowly.
Okay, well done. Good initiative. Hugh James, then I think it's Jeff Richardson, I think. Hugh.
Brilliant. So just touching on what you said with partnership working with town councils, I thought I'd just welcome the approach of this Wyndham Way study area in the trilogue approach, involving the town councils as equals. I think they really respect that sort of approach to working, and I think it's going to lead to a much more successful overall strategy in the end. I think getting working in partnership with people like Neil Douglas and Viper, who, if any of you don't know, he's on the LEP, so he's a real regional powerhouse. That sort of partnership work will really make sure that these things are successful. Obviously, the Portshead and I imagine Clevedon and Aylesey placemaking strategies aren't as glossy as the Western ones. There's not as much money available for them. But I think I'm really looking forward to the outcomes that they're going to give. In terms of our town councils ready for that approach, at least from the Wyndham Way study area where Portishead Town Council are involved, I've been really impressed with the work so far. So I think there's a real model for the future way placemaking can be done, especially in the towns that are, especially outside of Weston.
Thanks, Hugh. Councillor Richardson.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to ask Jenny what we actually need to do in Clevedon to get the placemaking strategy going, because I can't see anything happening at the moment. So is that something we need to press, Jenny, or is it something we should expect in the town council to be leading on?
Jeff, I wonder if at this stage we could all have our questions, and then Jenny, if you can come back. You seem to me to be sitting in the woodland making lots of notes, so you'll be able to come back to us on those. Yes, is that okay fine with you, Jeff?
Yes, of course. Yes,
yeah.
Thank you.
Do we have any other councillors? I can't see any other hands going up.
No other hands.
Oh, right. In which case it is over to
Richard, I think. John,
sorry,
Richard Tucker.
Just a quick one, please, Chairman, Vice
yes,
Chairman.
Sure.
On the back of what Hugh was saying and Jeff in regard to Portishead and Clevedon, I was just wondering how the engagement with Weston, obviously, is the biggest town council by far and representing about a third of the population, is going to take place. Obviously, we've probably got a lot more potential to be able to engage in some of these projects, and it's good it's happening. It's good the intention is there to involve towns a lot more. So I just wondered how that was actually going to the actual route of getting things going, I suppose, is what I'm saying. Thank you.
Okay, well, I think that's all. I don't see any other hands up. So Jenny, do you want to take us through some of those points?
I will endeavour to. address the points. So I think starting off with your own points, yes, you've made me sort of conscious. I didn't mention, for example, some of the socio-economic issues, which absolutely are important, and any place-making strategy needs to be thinking about how we can tackle those, but from a health side, from an employment side, from a social side, across the board. And that, so apologies if it wasn't particularly referenced, but it is an important strand. And a key part of that, you're quite right, is addressing private rental sector housing. And although, again, we're constrained currently by resources and capacity and legal powers as to what's possible, it is very much a sector where we would like to improve the quality of the housing going forward, whether that's by direct intervention or by working in partnerships with others. But you mentioned partnerships, and absolutely, and I think one of the key things we know is that we are not in the sort of days of the Victorians building towns in their own images. We don't. Not only do we have limited resources, we have limited control over property and land, and of course people, quite rightly so. And so we have to work with people across the board. It's not a choice, it's a reality, and so that's the way we will be continuing. So very much support that. And the comment on drive versus steering, well, yes, absolutely. And I think the focus of placemaking is doing with rather than doing to, and I think that is the ethos we're trying to adopt. Councillor Crewe mentioned Orchard Meadows. Yes, I think we've heard reports there of good trade carrying on. Councillor Bird, Western College and Library, absolutely. Jeff within my team is also in contact with Praxis and with the residential developer who's interested, and we do need to get that meeting going. I've also been having discussions with internal partners and colleagues as to what we think our approach should be, which I'm happy to discuss with you outside of the meeting. Wyndham Way trialogue, I like that new word there. Thank you, Councillor James. Agreed. It's good to see that moving forward positively. And I think Councillor Richardson, you asked about the Clevedon placemaking strategy. Yes, it's definitely something we want to do. We're quite stretched, and so I think we'll probably need to give that some thought. But I know that Lucy Shamali, our director, does have regular meetings with town councils, and I think that would be a useful one to put on the agenda for the next session, to discuss how it can be brought forward, again, working with yourselves and other partners. And obviously there is quite an active civic society in the broadest sense in Clevedon that we can tap into. Western Town Council engagement in the placemaking strategy, absolutely. There's a lot of work going on currently to sort of launch the partnership approach further. Obviously, there was a lot of engagement during the development of the strategy. But for example, next week there's a meeting with investors and developers and business owners and a whole range of representatives next week, which I think has about 120 people attending now. So I will check whether the town council are on that list or whether that's not the right event and there's a different thing planned. But yes, absolutely. And perhaps I know Councillor Crockford Hall is involved in the town council too, whether he has any updates that I've missed. I think finally I'd finish by saying towns are places of change. If they're not changing, they're probably not succeeding to a large extent. And so things will always continue to evolve, and we hope that we can work to make them evolve better. And that's where that hope comes in that was referred to earlier. There are certainly lots of opportunity, there's lots of talent, there's lots of good place, and there's lots of potential for the future. And final point is that Councillor Richardson has gained the glory in the Guess the Photo competition.
Well done. Thanks, Jenny. I mean, we're all aware, aren't we, that in particularly in our towns, I think more than our villages, we have diverse populations, some of whom hark back to their perception of something called the good old days, whatever they were and whenever they were, I'm not quite sure. And they often see everything that's going on in negative terms. Marks and Spencer's closes, so that's negative. Another shop closes, and that's negative. where a lot of, I suspect, a lot of younger people who've come specifically to live in our areas come with a different outlook, and perhaps it's that outlook that we need to tap into a little more. That's the positive outlook. And a few weeks ago, in one of those brief moments when we were allowed out, I found myself, as Hugh knows, in Portishead, and Portishead strikes me as a superb example of a place which has managed to develop two sides to its life. One is traditional Portishead, and the other is this brand new, almost brave world Portishead around the dock. It's sort of Bristol harbour side, just a bit downstream, and I look around there and I think, oh, this is really working. This is vibrant. This is almost mini city feel to it. And I look around my own hometown of Weston and think, this is what we need to create. And we just haven't quite got there yet, have we? For all sorts of reasons. And I can only hope that Homes England will help us get there. I try to keep my mind open on Homes England, and I will continue so trying. Any other comments on this paper? No. Right. Sorry, I'm juggling two screens and one has just gone off. So there we go. Right. In which case, Leo, are we voting to simply accept this or note it or what?
I think we're noting it, but members' comments, of course, will be fed back to officers through the minutes.
Yeah. And if I could, the final point, if I could, Richard Tucker's reference to Western Town Council. I don't know if this is putting a burden on any shoulders, but as a Western Town Councillor, as indeed Peter Crow and Richard are as well, I would be very interested to know the difference between the participation which the four town councils have with North Somerset over this sort of work. I know what Western Town Council is doing and is not doing, but I don't actually know what Portishead, Clevedon and Nailsea councils are doing in this. And I think it would be interesting for we members of SPEDA to know how the four town councils are responding to these participatory requirements.
Yeah.
I don't know if colleagues agree.
It would.
And also, Chairman, maybe how they are participating and enabling participation would be interesting to know as well.
Yeah.
Western Town Council, obviously being very large, we tend to receive the report, we comment as a body, and of course, as elected representatives, we bring ward views and ward differences. But I wonder if the other town councils approach it rather differently in terms of holding discussion forums and maybe being more sort of proactive, if you like. I think it'd be interesting to know.
Yes, excellent. And Sarah, my apologies. I didn't mention you as a Western Town Councillor as well. It's just that your face wasn't on my screen at that time.
Not at all.
So my apologies. Excellent. Right. Anything else on that particular part? No, thank you. Well, that takes us then up to item 8, doesn't it? Junction 21. Leo, do we have any other officers with us who need to be at this stage?
I'm here.
Yes, Jane Harris.
Oh, Jane's with us.
Jane
Excellent.
Here, yeah.
Right. Thank you, Jenny, for your help with that previous part. So, okay. So on to item 8, then the Junction 21 Enterprise Area, and we've all got the paperwork on that. Jane, do you want to take us through it without repeating everything that's on the paper?
Will do my best.
Sorry. If I could just interject, Leo, have I made a mistake and failed to look at the report 7.1, the Western Placemaking Dashboard.
That was an appendix to the report, Chairman. Yes. It was part of the report, so I'm assuming it was taken with the report. So
yes,
there.
Is there anything in that that anybody specifically wanted to raise? I've highlighted quite a few things, but probably some will come up in the following discussion. In any case, nothing further. Okay, just so as my poor chairing of this meeting didn't ride over that one. Okay, let's get back then to Junction 21 Enterprise Area, and we've all got that paperwork in front of us. So, right, can we be taken through it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I will endeavour to not just read from the paper, and I'll just try and give an overview, leaving some time for discussion.
Yeah, I mean, Jane, do accept that everybody will have read this,
right,
and thoroughly understood it, and they're waiting to question you. So, okay, so
I look forward to it. So I will keep it brief then in that case. So we're at the start of this process around developing what we're calling a new vision for Junction 21 Enterprise Area. We're looking at this point to seek some input from SPEDA to make sure we're looking at the right drivers, I guess, as to why we think this is important now, because the drivers will, I'm sure, shape what we look at and what sort of questions we want to answer. And I'll briefly go through the drivers in a second. And also just whether there is any, I think it's really at this stage, it's quite it's not a technical conversation. It's probably more of a conversation about what we think that the USP for Junction 21 Enterprise Area should, might be going forward, given that we know that there is maybe a different economic climate and set of drivers than when it was first established. So I'm just going into those in a little bit more detail. We're in a point now where we've launched our economic plan, which we've come to talk to you guys about before when it was in development. So it's now launched, and part of what we've looked at is the impact of COVID-19, particularly on the traditional office market. I think when Junction 21 was first envisaged, there was an idea that it might provide some overspill space for the Bristol office market, and there's a question as to whether that is still what it should be for. Given that we know more people are going to be working from home, we're looking at more kind of, I guess, whether there is that traditional office market that exists in the same way and whether that will change. Also, I think there's a driver around exacerbated by the impact of COVID, I think, but was there before, around addressing inequality in Western and what Junction 21 can do to reduce deprivation levels, how it can provide and create quality jobs and different sorts of jobs to what's in the town centre, and what is its role in that area, given its proximity to some of our areas that have higher levels of deprivation. Also, what it could or can do, or how it might respond to other strategic employment sites that are within close proximity. So here we think about sites like Gravity, which, for those that don't know, is a very, very, very large business park being brought forward in Bridgewater. Then also Hinckley and Hinkley Point C, and whether Junction 21 has a role in providing maybe some supply chain businesses to Hinkley Point C, and also Bristol Airport, and how those two strategic employment sites interact with each other. We also know, and this was prior to COVID, and we think is still an issue, is there is a requirement for space. Now, it might not be the traditional office space that we thought, but there is a requirement for space around light industrial and hybrid space, or grow on space, as it's called. So that's a certain sort of square footage of space that we know we've got near 100% occupation of for the units that we have that exist. But we have always struggled, I think. There's been some speculative development in Junction 21, but for some reason, despite the agents telling us that there is demand in this area, we haven't had as much speculative development of this office type, or this commercial space, as we would have expected. There's also a question around free ports. So the bidding round to become a free port area opened a couple of days ago. So that will be a response. So Bristol Port are very vocal in the fact that they want to become a free port, and they will be putting a bid in. The West of England is currently, the WECA is looking at is looking at whether there is a regional case for a free port, which from a North Somerset economic development position, we absolutely think there is, and we think Junction 21 should be considered within that free port geography. Free ports don't have to be contiguous, they don't have to be attached to the port, they can be what's called non-contiguous, so they can be sites around, almost satellite hub and spoke sites can be designated as having free port status, which could give us a set, if that's successful, could give us a set of tools to incentivize inward investment and business growth that would be incredibly beneficial to the region. And also, I think that there is a renewed focus from the partners that we work with at the West of England level around inward investment and trying to encourage businesses into the area. They're looking afresh and anew at which international markets we might want to focus on. So there is a question there about whether there's any USP around internationalisation that we want to consider for Junction 21. And there's also the local plan. So you'll know where we are with the local plan process. I'm sure SPEDA gets briefed on the local plan regularly. But it's how we can use the local plan to respond to the commercial demand that we've outlined, and also to create jobs within the Junction 21 enterprise area. There have been notable successes in the enterprise area, so it's not to say that it isn't growing. It is. We're seeing, Foodworks has opened, which is the Food and Drink Innovation Centre. We've had some amazing business successes going in there. We've had the Hive has opened. We've had some, like I said, we've had some speculative developments. We've created nearly 1,500 jobs across a variety of sectors. We've had the Construction Training Centre. So there are, stuff is happening in the enterprise area, but there's a question about, are we selling it properly? Do we have the right vision for it? Do we have the right narrative around it? How can we position it within the market? To sell it, I guess, to investors who might be interested in it. So that's what we've come today. We're at the very start of this as a conversation point. It's something that we're going to be working on as an officer team, but really bringing it to SPEDA at this point to get your initial thoughts and your initial input. I've got a set of questions in the paper, which I won't run through, Chair, because people can see them, but they are around, USP, what the right drivers are, and which corporate objectives could Junction 21 help us meet as well?
Thank you, Jane. That's an excellent précis. I think for the benefit of people, not colleagues, but people who may be watching this or may watch it later, I think there is some confusion in the public mind about what we mean by the Junction 21 enterprise area. I'm sure most people in Weston think of it as the immediate hinterland of the junction itself. But if we look at the map, which is included in our paperwork, we're talking about the area from the motorway right into Winstoke Road. So this is indeed much further inland from the motorway junction than I think most people understand, and that map helps us to understand it. Interesting to hear you refer to something we were chasing for years and no longer seem to be chasing, the overspill office market. I think several of us will remember the meetings we've attended where we've been trying to attract offices from all over the place, and that's no longer. Is planning like that? Are we forever chasing something, realizing we don't get it, and then we have to chase something else? But that's more of a rhetorical question than. Interesting that you talk about quality jobs. Yeah, of course, we all want quality jobs, don't we? But what about also the need to carry on and provide work for people who are not necessarily looking for what we call quality jobs? What we need are jobs. Some of those will, to a sort of middle-class intellectual way, be referred to as quality jobs. But equally, everybody needs jobs, and what we need is the contentment of occupation right across the social sphere. And we see a lot of people, certainly in Weston, who aren't with work and need to be. You used a phrase which I picked up on, I thought most interesting. Did you refer to hybrid space?
I did, and I'll
Yes.
probably defer to my colleague Alistair if you're looking
Right.
for a definition on hybrid, who has come with me,
Because
because I could probably give one, but it might be a bit loose.
Right. I've always been concerned that in planning we plan by zones, and so we end up having a place covered in housing, or we end up having a place covered in warehouses, or we end up having a place covered in some other form of use, where the traditional way that towns developed was, of course, more higgledy-piggledy. I live in the middle of a residential area, but if I want my car repaired, I walk 50 yards. I don't go out to an industrial estate. I go to the little garage, which today, if somebody put in a planning application to build a garage 100 yards from where I live, it would be refused because it's not in the right zone. And I just question sometimes how we zone our developments. Also picked up on another, you seem to hint that agents are not always truthful in what they're telling us. I'd appreciate a bit more thought on.
I didn't mean to hint that, Chair. That wasn't my intention.
Well, I incorrectly picked it up then. And I mean, good to hear about things like the Food and Drink Innovation Centre, though, can I admit my ignorance as chairman, and I really ought not to, but I'm going to. I haven't a clue what goes on in there.
We will bring. We were happy to bring an item.
If I
very pleased.
Then that's very bad. And but I just wonder how many of my colleagues, we've all heard of it. We also, oh, yes, this is great, but do we actually know? So perhaps we need to learn a little bit. And the other thing is, I'd like to throw in, because I've thrown it in several times before, and make no apologies for it, the Avon Crest site, which is on the map. And for anyone who doesn't know where it is, it's if you look at the map, it's north of the railway line, between the railway line, the main railway line, and the main approach road into Weston. It's a plot of land opposite the road from Hutton Moor Recreation Centre, and it's the former refuse tip. Has all sorts of contamination problems. I believe it's owned by Homes England, isn't it? And it's earmarked. It's not owned by Homes England, but it is earmarked for residential use.
So I can confirm on that. It's actually owned by us, the council,
right.
But Homes England bought out the previous leaseholder, and we have an agreement to work with them on the site, and they have been funding technical studies, etc.
Yep. Thank you, Jenny, for that. Right. So it's owned by us, but there is a link with Homes England. I foresee unbelievable problems in trying to develop that site, and I've got a little pet desire to see it taken out of any development potential and turned into an urban woodland, which would be between the new developing areas on what we can loosely refer to as the airport and the other side of Weston, giving people in that area a true new woodland landscape that would be of an immense size and I think would greatly improve the lot of the new developing areas. But that's enough. That's enough from me. Jane and Jenny, once again, I think if members throw in the points and then you come back to challenge what we're saying, if that's okay. Sarah, your hand was up first, then Hugh second. So Sarah, over to you. Sarah, Councillor Codling.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you. Apologies to one and all. My video screen's deliberately off today because I'm on call for work, so I'm trying to multitask and epically failing. Thank you, Jane, for that. A question for you and Alistair and Jenny. And apologies if this is covered where I've missed it or it's stating the bleeding obvious, but I'd like to make it anyway. It's hardly international, but I'd really like us to keep at the front of our minds South East Wales, particularly Monmouthshire as a county is absolutely busting with small enterprises, innovation. I sincerely hope the Food Works have reached out to businesses there in the chambers of commerce, particularly up in Monmouth, I used to commute there from Weston-super-Mare. I live right near Junction 21. Used to commute every day to Monmouthshire, and now we've got no bridge tolls. It's eminently more attractive, and I think we would be where we're placed and our reach to the port and our reach into the southwest region and all of our links. Surely we would be really well placed to have a great offering for a lot of businesses in southeast Wales.
Okay, interesting point there. I'm sure. Sorry, Sarah, was that?
Yes, thank you. That's it. Yeah.
Okay. Hugh, next, then Patrick Keating.
Yeah. I'm sure Patrick will be able to explain all this in more detail, but I was a bit worried, a bit hesitant seeing on page 2 the bit about free ports. I know today the Chancellor has announced £3 billion for local authorities to create jobs through free ports, so I get that that's where the money is, but especially looking at Business West reports that have said that free ports add little to the community that they're in, that they can widen inequalities, that they don't create good jobs, they just create jobs. I'm a bit hesitant about that. I understand that logistics is probably going to be a growth economy around the southwest, so perhaps that's a positive element to come out of it. There's a new skills area for people in Western to specialise in, but I would really appreciate for you to explain a bit more about your thoughts around free ports and why North Somerset is quite so on board with them as an idea, opposed to any other kind of development that could go on that site that isn't supporting tax, creative use of tax.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor James. Councillor Keating.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, I was going to build on some of those points that Councillor James was making, and express my concern around such support being given to free ports. The academic evidence and most of the evidence globally shows that free ports don't create additional value. As Councillor James was saying, they don't necessarily create quality jobs. The document says that free ports are areas where goods in transit are exempt from customs duty. That's not all they do. The free ports, particularly as they're proposed in the government consultation, also allow for slashing of planning regulations, slashing of environmental, labour and social standards, and indeed internationally, and I have some experience in this in previous work, often offer opportunities for tax avoidance, tax evasion and other rather unsavoury activities. If the intention is to simply have manufacturing that's exempt from customs duty, there are existing methods available, such as inward processing relief. So I'm a bit sceptical and a bit concerned that the free ports have such prominence in this document. I think as a council we should think very carefully around being supportive of them. That being said, if there is one at the Port of Bristol, we should obviously seek to eke out some benefit from it. But I would be very wary about being a flag-waving cheerer in the cause of free ports, as I think they're not the glittering city on a hill that some in government may have us think that they are. They do come with a lot of risk and a lot of downside. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Keating. I've got Councillor Richardson now. Jeff.
Thanks, Chair. Just a couple of things. I'd like to say how much I appreciated the map that you mentioned. That for a non-Westerner, that was really, really useful. I just thought it might be useful, and I don't know how easy it is to do, to actually have some kind of timeline on it, because looking at it, I can't see whether the things I'm looking at actually exist or whether they're going to exist and in what timescale. And there's obviously a lot of major projects going on in this area, which would dictate what we could do when. I'm slightly confused that there's we're talking about a distribution setting down on Winterstoke Road, which is going to be quite a long way from the junction. And the other question I had really was the Gravity Enterprise Zone, which is a new one on me, but what is their USP? What are they going to major on? So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other? I don't see any other hands up at this point. So could I go back to Jane and Jenny, if you need to interject, to take us through some of those points, please?
Yeah, no problem. So there are a few things I picked up from what you said, Chair, around, I'll just maybe summarise, because there's quite a few questions in there, summarise the points that I need to respond to, if that's all right to start with. So something around quality jobs and a little bit of information about the Food and Drink Innovation Centre. Maybe a little bit more clarity around what a hybrid space is, and I don't know if you needed a bit more information on Avon-Crest. Jenny's just said she can respond on Avon-Crest, so I'll bring her in at that point. There was a question around South East Wales and Monmouthshire innovation and looking towards maybe slightly different geographies to them where we've previously maybe looked to, around kind of engaging with other businesses, other clusters, other ecosystems. There's some points around free ports that need to be addressed and spoken about, and then there was some points around sort of a timescale around where we are with current development, what might be coming forward in the future, which I'll probably defer to my colleague Alistair on, and also a bit more background on gravity. Does that cover it? Okay, I'm seeing some nods. So on quality jobs, I recognise at the moment we are. I think that we are potentially, seeing where we might be at the end of the furlough scheme in March 2021, potentially facing a looming redundancy crisis that does worry me. I'm very concerned about the loss of jobs. I'm particularly concerned about loss of jobs for young people. We know that's a particular cohort of people that have been particularly badly impacted by COVID, because of often where the types of jobs and the types of sectors that have felt the biggest downturn in terms of patronage and footfall. But however, despite the fact that we do need jobs, we need to be very careful about jobs at any cost, and we need to be ambitious for our residents around terms and the sorts of jobs we're bringing in, that they aren't precarious, that they have good terms and conditions, that they have decent pay that people can live on, or else I'm not doing my job as an economic development manager if I'm only doing the business side and I'm not doing the people side. So we look towards working with businesses around engaging with Western College, for example, on progression opportunities, on skills opportunities, around upskilling. We look to work with employers around looking if they start to consider paying the living wage. So there are things, and mental health support at work. There are packages of support out there that we can get out to employers that helps them provide good quality jobs, and we will continue to do that and be ambitious for our residents and push our employers to deliver that good quality for residents, because it feeds back into the local economy and it will actually strengthen us and make us more resilient as a local economic area. On the Food and Drink Innovation Centre, I'm more than happy if the panel would like to bring back a more targeted item around FoodWorks and let you know how it's getting on. But as a summary, the build completed actually, I think, the first or second week of the first lockdown. So we had some very frantic conversations about what we would do with this building. Could we get anyone into it? Could we safely operate it? And we're really pleased that it is operating. So just in terms of what's there are a series of units, and I've forgotten, I think it's 12, but if Andy was here, she'd probably be cross with me if I got the number wrong, but there are a series of units that are workspace units for food and drink businesses. The idea that businesses that would go in there are those that have what we call sort of a high growth potential. So they have a turnover at a certain level, but we think they can grow, and they have a 3 to 5 year lease. And then the idea is we should be building space for them to grow into. So that's our next big project, is how do we create that space for them to grow into, because we don't want to lose them once we've sort of got them landed in North Somerset. And then the other part of the space, because there's this sort of workspace element, and then the other part of the space is an innovation centre. And in the innovation centre, there are 4 test kitchens with loads of amazing kit in that basically businesses can come in and rent some time to use to develop their product. So they don't have to have a workspace, but they can come in and rent a piece of dairy equipment that they can't afford to buy for themselves, and they can use that to develop their product. So that is essentially the principle. There is an innovation element and there is a workspace element, and there's also a business support element wrapped around it as well from the on-site technical experts who are absolutely awesome. But more than happy to bring an update on FoodWorks, because it is, given where we were at the start of lockdown, where I was worried that we wouldn't be able to get anyone in, it's doing wonderfully. So it's a really good news story. I will quickly touch on South East Wales and Monmouthshire and innovation. Sarah, I'd be really keen to talk to you about some of your links there. I'm sure that particularly our food and drink partners have reached out in that direction, but I'd want to make sure that we're doing that. It's probably, we often look, I think, to the west of England and to our partners within WECA And I think that we probably do have these connections, but I'm sure they can be strengthened. So perhaps you and I can have a catch up and sort of touch base on businesses or business communities there that we should or could be linking in with. On free ports, so at this stage, so the free port bid will come from the port. It's a private sector led bid. Essentially, the stage that we're at the moment is that there is a piece of research going on at the West of England level, which will look at the case for support for a free port bid from the unitary authorities within the area. So there is that research piece going on at the moment that should provide us with the evidence base to respond more formally, I guess, to the questions that the councillors have rightly raised that we need to consider. So that is a piece of research that is being done. I suppose I included in the paper to show that it is a driver. It is something that is out there. It is something that is on our patch. We have a port that has expressed an interest, and I think that we need to engage with that to get the right opportunities and to maximise the impact from that could be coming forward, which I'm sure doesn't necessarily alleviate some of the concerns that have been raised, but to let you know there is a piece of research that will be going on in that forum to understand some of those opportunities and challenges a bit better. And then on the map, gravity. So gravity, I think its USP is that it is very large. And very big and can provide a lot of space. And I think that it's serviced and ready to go and developable. But I'm sure Alistair can provide a bit more detail on gravity because I think he's looked into it in a bit more detail than me. So I might hand over to Alistair to talk about hybrid space, the map and what's coming forward and where it is and the sort of timescale, and also a bit more about gravity, if that's okay.
Well, I'll start with gravity. So yeah, it's about 600. What's that? 600 acres of space. So it's a good deal larger than any sort of single piece of development land and private held development land in sort of our neighbouring areas, if you will. I mean, you've probably got to go to an old steelworks in South Wales to find something about that size. It's owned by an investment company. It was the old BA British Aerospace Ordnance Factory that some may remember down in Huntsville. That was bought by a company called, an investment company called Salamanca, who are in the process of spending a not inconsiderable amount of money and turning it into, sort of a business park for the 21st century. Something that is very green. It's got very green credentials, low carbon. They're putting, they claim to be putting dark fiber networks into that. So that's sort of broadband, as part of that infrastructure package. They got some money from the Heart of the Southwest LEP to put some roads in through that's sort of coming from the motorway junction up into there. So they're doing a lot. Rail connection as well, or the weather network rail, who are notoriously difficult in terms of allowing stations to be built and allowing sort of sidings to be put in that ever takes place. But so there's a lot of talk around it. I mean, clearly the bottom line for us is we have a talent pool, we have population in Western, and that is close to us. So it's a very similar argument that we would make about horizon scanning, and that's something this paper kind of tries to capture, is about horizon scanning in terms of looking at the airport, in terms of looking at Freeports, looking at gravity, looking at Hinckley, and saying what are the opportunities for our populations in those concepts. We don't have the space to be able to compete with gravity, to be able to maybe attract some of those companies. We'll let them do the hard work. They can go off and get the companies, but we'll supply the labour. We'll be ready to have those conversations and allow Junction 21, to take some of the supply chain, some of the smaller supply chain opportunities, as we potentially can with the airport, as we can with the M&E phase for Hinckley. We're constantly out there looking for these opportunities to give J21 EA a bit of continue its USP. Hybrid space, on that kind of space conversation. So what we're thinking about there is, it is a little bit of a return to that old traditional idea of mixed uses taking place. So you look at some of our business parks, and these days, and the new one that was built at World by the railway station, I use as a good example for this. That's got high-tech manufacturing and prototyping and costing technology in there. That's got data centers for cryptocurrency. That's got t-shirt manufacturing. It's got a furniture supply company who are predominantly office-based. That's what we mean about hybrid. It's not about a business park that is zoned purely to do one activity. It will have office occupiers. It will have some really high-tech, cutting-edge activity right next door to a very traditional business. So that's what we mean by hybrid. Absolutely. We're pushing the boundaries with concepts like that, and the local plan's going to respond to this, because I have been speaking to Michael and to Marcus on this. You know, the local plan is going to respond to that in terms of, you know, what opportunities does the new use class E give us to really be flexible, really respond quickly to new occupiers, to new businesses. You think about that data center for cryptocurrency. No one would have thought about that 6 years ago, 7 years ago, but they exist. And we've got to be able to kind of capture that opportunity in that. Don't necessarily be the Westland distribution. Yes, that's the old name of that park, the historic name that that St Modwin's put on that park. So yes, it is a good distance from the motorway, but what's in a name really for that? The opportunities are there that gives us some good quality, well, second-hand quality space, but it's priced right in our market to give people that first rung on the ladder for their businesses, for their small businesses. You know, the proof is that St Modwin's recently sold that to another, sold that to another investment company, and the place, you know, is fairly well occupied as well. So, you know, it is a viable location.
Thank you, Alistair. Yeah. Any other officers coming back on that?
I think I said I'd come back on Avon Crest very briefly.
Yes, and then so, if I could say, I haven't forgotten Jeff Richardson and Peter Crew, but Jenny, if you'd come back on that, please. Yes.
Yeah, so I'm aware there are various proposals, including from the Town Council, about possibly reallocating that site for woodland due to the difficulties in delivery. There are certainly difficulties in delivering. It is a landfill site, or was, and so it would need decontamination remediation. I suppose the counter to that would be, so did Portishead Marina once upon a time. I believe that had to be dug out 3 meters deep to get rid of all the phosphorus. So things do happen sometimes, but they do require national support. And I guess the issue with Avon Crest is whether it's the scale that it would get that support. But it's not out of the... it's not impossible. The main issue with it not coming forward would be the local plan, I suppose. It's allocated for 700 homes plus commercial land. Obviously, if it came out of the local plan, and I think this is where the issue probably needs to be addressed, we would have to find another location for that quantum of housing. And as you know, that's not easy. But it may be a choice that you as members feel should be made, and certainly we'll kind of provide reports and recommendations, etc., going forward about that. But for the moment, we are continuing to work with Homes England on seeing what can be done.
Yes, even though the chances of getting 700 homes on a contaminated site, which is not of major national significance and isn't likely to attract huge decontamination funding, as say Portishead Docks did, is pretty limited.
You would think so, but government is talking about changing the metrics as to what they invest in. So, you know, you never know.
Yeah. And the other thing, I suppose, is that by digging out Portishead Docks, it actually returned it to what it was and has turned it into a particularly attractive area. Digging out an old-fashioned refuse tip just to cover it in houses is not perhaps of the same visual reward.
Yeah, I think we need to look at the options, and we do continue. I mean, there is a need for somewhere for things that are less easy to place in a residential area, for example, such as depots. You know, there's been some fire station interest in the past, but all of that does cost money. Yep. And it is. I'm not denying it's difficult. It would be lovely to see as an urban woodland clearly there would still be contamination issues to be addressed, but I think open to all discussions, and it will be certainly one to look at through the local plan.
It could end up, Jenny, looking like your backdrop in the middle of Weston. So that's okay. Sorry, I was it? Yes, it was Jeff Richardson, and I've forgotten who else. Jeff.
Me.
Yep, Jeff. Over to you.
Jeff, sorry, I must have left my hand up, John. So I don't want to.
Oh, sorry. Did anybody else have a hand up?
Councillor Crewe was also.
Sorry, yes, thank you. Peter, Councillor Crewe.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I agree that the new vision of Junction 21 is needed. We have, I mean, the Parkway site is brilliant. We need more things like that. I'm conscious of the fact along through Westwick, there's been a sign up now for 12 years for land for development. It can't be used for housing. It's too close to the motorway. Persimmon has sold it on to yet another company. But I think places like that, it just needs remarketing to try and get people in there. And I think small industrial units or the type of hybrid that we've been talking about would suit that. But we can do nothing else there. Certainly down as far as the food works concerned, that's been a brilliant start off there. And obviously, if we can build on that with more down through that way, it's even better. It would be nice if the hotel got underway, which of course would help us. But the office block we scheduled to go alongside Nightstone, obviously with different working in offices these days, that may not happen. So that's another area we need to consider. But if we think there could be, for example, distribution centre, now that takes in larger buildings. So we may have to rethink where that would go, and maybe down beyond between the food works and the plasterboard works might be a better place for something like that. Just general information, Chairman.
Yep, thank you, Peter. I think I've got Karen, Dr. Havson next.
Yes, I just wanted to echo the statement about jobs, not just good jobs, but we do need jobs. And I think we also desperately need to link those jobs to our need to retrofit our existing building stock in Western, especially in Weston-super-Mare. And so I would just like to encourage cooperation with upskilling with Weston College and going down that route of creating jobs in the retrofitting economy, especially coming out of this pandemic. I think that route would be would combine all the needs in our area, retrofitting deprived areas and the need for new jobs. Thank you.
Yep, thanks, Karen. I've got Mark Crosby, Councillor Crosby.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to say to welcome Alistair's enthusiasm and commitment. Really, I thought that was great. Thank you. You lifted me. If you like, I regularly, virtually every other week, drive down to Minehead to see my mum. But I drive through Bridgewater. And you cannot miss the extraordinary investment that they have made in employment as you go through it. And I think a similar commitment and drive, as shown by Alistair, is what's needed here. Good luck to you. I thought it was very good.
Funnily enough, I wrote the word enthusiasm down on my notepad here at the same time. So
somewhat infectious, I think.
I think one of the problems, probably, which many of our officers face, is that they are worn down by we wretched councillors, who every time they come up with something enthusiastic, we dull the scene, and they go away thinking, "Oh God, we have to put up those dreary people telling us what we can't do," and here we are. So Alistair, we're not going to blunt your enthusiasm. Just make sure everybody else has it as well, and we will try to do our best to ensure the elected members become infected with the enthusiasm, rather than some of the droning tedium that some of them. Anyhow, we won't pursue that line.
I have to admit, I thought it was more the other way round, Councillor Crawley, but
yes, yeah, right. I'm in danger of getting off the subject.
Chair, may I respond to Councillor Hamilton's points?
Yes, please.
Thank you. It was just really about the need to link together sort of, I guess, jobs in the green economy and retrofit into our local economy, into our local businesses, and tying that in with the skills piece. And I guess I just wanted to provide some assurance that we have an employment and skills strategy, which has a theme within it around green skills, and also looking to try and support our businesses to understand what skills they might have that they don't have now, but that they need around things like retrofit and decarbonisation. And we have that strategy, and we are also obviously in conversation with Western College about what sort of skills and courses and packages there are out there that we could work with them on. And we are going to be starting it relatively soon at what we're calling a North Somerset Employment Skills Task Force, which will bring together all the key players in that employment skills arena to basically take that strategy that we've had adopted and make sure that everyone is working together to deliver that. And what I'm thinking that we'll do is we'll potentially use theme sessions around areas that we know are emerging skills requirements. And I think green skills fits into that really nicely. And we'll want to do some targeted work with all the partners and all the players around that area, because not only because it's good to do and nice to do, but actually because there's growth there are jobs there, there's a good economic reason for doing that activity. So I'll just say, rest assured, we are thinking about it, we are working on it, and we are trying to link that up as best we can.
Excellent. Do you think, James, and colleagues, do you think sometimes we spend so much time talking about strategies and long-term projects, and we fail to pat the back of those individual successes, and there are times when something happens and we need to be saying, great, that's another bit of the jigsaw, rather than right, okay. Alistair, your hand is up.
To an extent, Chair, yes, but also remember, investors want to know that we're a good long-term set. So they want to see that we've got an idea, and I think maybe that's what the enterprise area, and it's about that USP point. When we first, when back in sort of 11, 12, 13, when previous administrations were coming up with this, the other areas in the west of England from a very early stage had a clearer idea about that long-term plan. And in many stages that was already in train for many years. We didn't have that. So when we go out there and we do talk to investors, the first thing they ask is, well, what does this look like in the long term? If I'm spending my X number of £1 million, what is my return on investment in this? Yeah. Will I get staff? We've got to be able to answer those questions. The role of food works locally, very, very localized on, but then also the placemaking work that we've been doing, that the markets are responding well to that. When you speak to investors, when you speak to the agents, they're really positive around that. We are really reimagining Western in the teeth of what is an unprecedented situation with COVID and all of that. So yeah, they do want us to think in that long term, in that medium and long term, and be able to say, no, we know where this will be in 10 years time. Do we need to get this message across a little more effectively, not to the business world as you're doing, but to the local resident world, which just doesn't catch on to these successes? Yes, because they are business people. If you think about the triangle of business, or the long tail as central government will talk about it, they are the small businesses who do employ. They're the ones who are searching and really failing to find that grow on space that we talk about. So you absolutely do need to articulate those messages about that long-term vision in every single forum, in every single, using, I will always say, let's use Life, our resident magazine, and really hammer some clear messages home about how we're creating those jobs and green jobs, etc.
Because it can be rather depressing sometimes when you read local newspapers and week after week it's negativity writ large by those who make a profession of writing letters to newspapers,
Yeah.
and it people pick up on that, and you only need somebody to repeat the same negative story several times and people believe it. I mean, we're all politicians. We know that all we have to do to win elections is repeat the same mantra over and over again, and people end up believing it. How else did America elect that? Well, anyhow, we'll not pursue that.
I always say we have to be our own advocates.
Yes.
We have to be our own advocates for this place that we're living and working and trying to support, and we have to promote it, and we have to be our ambassador for our place.
Yeah.
We've got to be as good as that as we can possibly be, because that is a massive tool that we have.
Yeah, we need to be more demonstrative and less reticent. So, Hugh James, Councillor James.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure if this is the place, but this is a sort of fluid point of the meeting, so I'll just ask it anyway. The employment and skills strategy we have, because it was mentioned, a lot of that did mention joining WECA and was reliant on extra stuff on us joining WECA. Is there any scope, do you think, that we can say to government, we did our best to join a combined authority, unfortunately weren't able? Can you help us unlock the funding that we would have been able to? Because I've been scrutinising West of England skills and employment stuff for the last month, but unfortunately we don't access any of that. But there's a lot exciting being done, especially in terms of green construction. I think now the green industrial strategy has just been announced from government. We finally have a carrot to attract FE colleges to use the fiscal sites we've given them, like the Institute for Technology, to unlock that sort of green construction industry. Bit rambly, but basically,
yeah.
What do you think we can do? Do you think there's some site? Yeah, where are the opportunities?
Yeah.
Do you think we could do that? Ask to government, because we've done literally everything within our ability to unlock the funding.
So.
Jane and Alistair, you have the answer to that, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. Got it covered. So, I think it sort of refers a little bit back to the question around strategies. This is why we need the strategies, because we need to be able to then demonstrate up to government why it is we need the money and what priorities we need to achieve and where the need is. And we've got that clearly articulated now. I think it's a tricky one. There are pots of money that, being part of a combined authority, you are allowed and able to access. One of those things, for example, in the skills arena, is a devolved adult education budget. We get adult education budget in North Somerset. It just isn't devolved, so we have less control over how it's spent, essentially. Whereas if we were part of WECA, we would be able to influence the adult education budget in a way that we think would better benefit our residents. So there are pots of money that we still have, we just have less control over. Then there are these other pots of money that or bits of funding that may become available through various government schemes and priorities, that I would say for every opportunity that we can make a bid up to central government that doesn't require being part of a combined authority, where it meets our priorities, we will try and do that. We've already been successful in securing some money from DWP for a couple of programmes in employment skills, around digital inclusion, and one around trying to get some support operating through our libraries as well. So we are doing that already, and it's having that strategy that has allowed us to unlock that funding. And I think in the Chancellor's statement today, there was noise made about, greater support packages around employment and skills. In particular, they're obviously feeling the same concerns that we are feeling around where things might go in terms of redundancy numbers and redundancy levels. So I don't have all the answers around, we from an officer perspective, being part of WECA would have been very helpful, particularly where we feel it the hardest is in employment and skills, I would say. But we will continue to make the case. And WECA are very, very good at working with us. So there are some parts of the funding that is ESF funded, and they match in with their own devolved funding. And we always get the element that is ESF or national funding, and they're very good at working with us on that to make that happen. And we will continue to do that.
Jane, I'm disappointed.
Oh,
you said you don't have all the answers. I thought that's what we employed you for.
Very comprehensive, though. Thank you very much.
Any other questions of Jane, Alistair, or Jenny on this? No, I think that's well. I don't know about colleagues, but I found that a very fruitful discussion. Thank you all very much for that. Right, that takes us, if there's nothing else on that part of the agenda, that takes us on to the final item, which is item 9, the panel's work plan. Leo, do you want to introduce this?
Yeah, yes, Chairman. Members have all got the work plan in front of them, well, in their report pack. I'm not intending to go through it in any detail. I will, of course, take any suggestions that members have by exception. What I would do, though, is just to highlight sections 2 and 3, 3 in particular. But at the moment, the work plan is kind of static. It's not particularly forward-gazing. So most of the items listed are current work streams. We are in discussion with officers at the moment. I can see this starting to fill up a bit more in terms of the horizon going forward, as we start to build in a sort of timetable of the kinds of engagement points, the key engagement points that are going to come at points where members are going to be engaged going forward. But just also to highlight that this is this part of the work plan item is an opportunity for members to put their thoughts, to feed their ideas, their suggestions into any areas that they feel the panel should be focusing on as we move forward.
Open to the floor. Hugh, you've rescued me because I had nothing to say at that point.
Just the one thing, which is the housing ASH and the housing infrastructure, the housing issues group. We're very interested in looking at greater scrutiny, delivery of social housing and in North Somerset, and I think it would be quite remiss if we did that without joint working with SPEDA. So I don't wonder whether that might be a valuable area of joint working in the future.
Jenny, your hand is up. You're responding to that, or?
Yes, just in case councillors weren't aware, the affordable housing enabling team are now part of my wider development team. So they are part of the Place Directorate now rather than what was P&C. So I know the scrutiny panels aren't directorate based, but there is a certain logic to perhaps having some linked up working with COCO as suggested. And we'd be happy to provide reports as needed.
Good. Leo, I sense a period of silence coming over my colleagues. I wonder if it's because we feel we have got enough on our plate as it is, and people aren't actually desirous of spending yet more time staring into a screen.
One thing I would pick out is there was some interest shown by members in having, whether it's an informal meeting or a workshop, or whether it comes to panel, there was an interest in hearing more about food works. So I will definitely be adding that to the work plan, but it would be useful to get some guidance as to how you wanted that to come.
Yes, I mean, from my own point of view, it's simply to help overcome my own ignorance. I need to know more about it just because I'm interested. And you know, if we were in a normal world, we'd say to Jane, arrange a site visit so we could all potter along and have a look. Well, we're not quite back into that world yet, are we? But I mean, I see that as simply showing us something, telling us something, rather than engaging us in a discussion about it. So, Jane, you're going to respond.
Yeah, I was going to say I'm happy to get, so there's a couple of things we can do. We can get you a written briefing with some images of the centre, because that can help to sort of get the picture in the mind of how it's operating. And we can just get that circulated to panel members, if that'd be helpful. And then we can always, pick up any, if there are questions, we could always come back to a session and engage if needed. And we can arrange site visits in due course when it's safe to do so. We did do some site visits in between the two lockdowns, and they've got a COVID secure way of doing that and operating around the building. So happy to, maybe, or even perhaps when we are, I don't know if this is a thing that can happen with the scrutiny panel, but when we are, back to normal ways of being, we could host a scrutiny session at the centre. I'm sure we could organise for that to happen as well. So because there are meeting rooms there, and it's set up with a bit of a conference facility. So over to you really in terms of that. It might not be for the next 4 months or so being at the centre, but we could certainly get that maybe on the forward plan as a place to hold a session if that would be of interest.
I think extending that point as well, Jane, that since the election, there was relatively little time before which we all went into purdah. I have been in the town hall since March once, and everything else is conducted by staring at this ghastly screen. Not the people on it, but the mechanics of it. And I long for the time when perhaps as a council we members could start going around our district and becoming a little more educated about some of the places we're not terribly certain of anymore. I can wax eloquent about Weston, but take me to some of the other areas and my ignorance would come forth, and it ought not to. And I need to be, I just need to see more. And perhaps we're all in that position. So somebody has already popped up a point. Well, some of our meetings around the district. Yeah, I mean, why not? Particularly, I think, the towns. I'm not talking down the villages, but it strikes me there's so much going on, or so much potential, or so much that needs to be attended to in our towns, that at times, perhaps as members, we're a little inclined to be town councillors in North Somerset rather than North Somerset councillors for every town which is in it, if I can put it like that. So yes, and somebody has said, yeah, Patrick has said there's a lot going on in the villages too. Yeah, I'm in trouble now. Yes, okay. We'll visit the villages as well. Jane, you're going to rescue me from the hole I'm digging myself.
I have to say that Alistair has made a very salient point to me, which is that there is likely to be a number of businesses that might be willing and able to host as well, and maybe some of those would be located in villages. Yep.
Thank you. You've got me out of that hole. Perfect. I mean, the last visit I had was well, both to the airport and to the port. But I haven't. COVID has knocked us for six, I know, but it's there we are. Councillor Richardson tells us he's lost all sound and he's leaving.
Chairman, just for reference, just to say that Spedder actually, under its old guise, did that at Portishead and Nailsea about 8 years ago.
Yeah.
So we have done it before.
Yeah, I remember.
Toto's done it a couple of times.
Peter, I was much younger. It's about time we did it again. So, any other? Leo, do we need to do anything more on that item?
No, I think that's covered it, Chairman.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Now, and that's covered the agenda, hasn't it? There's no such thing as any other business. So, thank you all very much. I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. Too often on screen we don't converse, we just make statements. So I think that's been very fruitful. Thank you all very much, and thank the officers once again for your combined enthusiasm. Much appreciated. Thank you all. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you all.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.